Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and I am excited to be back with you for issue number 75 of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. That's a lot of Joe on Joe Illustrateds. That's a lot of G.I. Joe. That is, it's a lot of talk. It's a lot of panels. It's a lot of me running off at the mouth. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me so much. Like you don't even believe it. You don't even understand. I can't even put it into words. All my patrons. I guess you call them patrons on Patreon. So you guys are all fantastic. You guys can, if you do want to help support the show, you can go to patreon.com/JoeandJoePod. And you can join and just throw a couple bucks my way each month to help keep the lights on. But if you're, the least you can do is follow me on socials at Joe and Joe Pod. I know not everyone's on social media, but at Joe and Joe Pod at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Or if you're listening to this show in a in any kind of podcatcher form, if you're not still doing it like retro with an RSS feed on a Winamp player off your desktop running Windows XP. Most podcatchers have a review, so hit that review. Hopefully give me 5 stars. But be honest, I like constructive criticism. But I really like you guys, so I thank you to all the patrons, new and old, everyone that's supported the show, reached out and given me love. It helps, and it comes and it keeps spirits up, and it makes you want to come back for more G.I. Joe, which we're doing this week. But it's only possible because of your support and the support of the fabulous Movies and a Meal podcast.
Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts, and you also love movies. So why not do a podcast? It's about not one movie. It's about not 2 movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show.
So when you're done listening here, go over and give them a listen. They're the best. Now, G.I. Joe 75, we're continuing the Cobra Civil War, which is fantastic. It's funny, I was reading this and my brain was starting to go, like, I was starting to get these flashbacks of the first time that I'm like, I thought I remembered this being a bi-weekly comic. And then I was like, well, but we didn't see that last month. But sure enough, this month in our next segment,
You were saying?
Where we look at other comic books that were on the shelf during this time. This was the summer of bi-weekly. I had G.I. Joe as a subscription, and I was getting them twice a month. And I do absolutely recall reading the Cobra Civil War twice a month at my kitchen table. So that tells me, I bet you, if I were to go and look at my G.I. Joe issues that are in the long boxes over there, I would bet you that these issues are folded in half because subscription issues, and this goes back to, Silver Age Marvel stuff and DC stuff too, but they would mail them and they would get bent in transit in mail. Probably a lot of you know this, but there's a fair amount of you that may not. So if you're ever looking at really older books, stuff from like subscriptions from like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they stopped. I feel like they started whatever services to like mail flat started in the mid 90s once the collectability, that 90s collectability craze of like, I need my comic in mint condition really kicked into gear. But even now, all the way through 88, these things were being mailed and they were being mailed folded. So there's a whole raft of back issues. We get them a lot in the shop where someone will bring their old books in and, it'll be old issues of the Fantastic Four. And one by one, they all have the same. Usually it's not a cover or like a color break on the cover. Actually, it's usually not a hard crease, but there's a soft crease and goes right through the middle of the book. And that's from being mail order. So if you're ever looking through back issues or someone's old collection and you ever see a bunch of books that are folded, promise you that wasn't the person who was doing the reading, doing the folding. That was because whoever originally got that book got it from a mail order subscription. So with that in mind, let's take a look at Marvel Comics and see what else was in Marvel. Now, the reason I know this was bi-weekly at the time is because over at Marvel in September of 1988, there are 2 issues of G.I. Joe listed. So that means 2 issues were on the shelf this month. Of course, G.I. Joe number 75. We also have G.I. Joe number 76. Another exciting issue, and I know, guys. Skidmark was what you previously thought was the character find of 1988. But the real answer is Speedball. Speedball Speedball made his debut in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 22. Now, within months, Marvel debuted characters named after an accident in your underpants and now a drug combination, often lethal. So Skidmark and Speedball, Marvel Comics, making 1988 family friendly since 1987. Yeah, that's awesome, Marvel. But the summer annuals were starting up, so we've got I think we talked last time. It's the Evolutionary War stuff's happening. So Spider-Man Annual 22, the FF are on Annual 21. Any other New Mutants Annual number 4? Any other annuals stand out here that I can see real quickly? No. Over in X Factor, it's a gorgeous Steve Lytle, rest in peace cover of Cyclops. It was the X-Men fighting the Avengers. And I think, if I remember this story, they weren't the actual Avengers. They were some kind of robotic versions of the Avengers, but I can't be 100% sure on that. Willow number 2 is on the stands. Exciting. This is great. X-Men 234 and 233. The X-Men also went bi-weekly that summer. This was the X-Men fighting the Brood in Colorado. I think they were in Denver. And specifically, I think they fought him I feel like they fought him at the Red Rock Coliseum, the big amphitheater there. If you've not read this run, it's great. It's like a mini arc within the pages. It's Silvestri art. It's really, really good. It answers the questions, what would happen if Alien, the Xenomorph from Alien, reached Earth and the X-Men were the only ones there to stop it. It's really great. The cover to 234 is Wolverine turning into a Brood, not an alien, not a Xenomorph, pardon me. Speaking of that, I just read the Alien, I guess it would have been Alien 3, Dark Horse original William Gibson screenplay comic book. They published it about 2 years ago. I meant to pick it up when it came out, and I forgot about it, and then I remembered and I grabbed it off Amazon, the hardcover. And while really well done, it's really a great example of first draft ideas. Like, William Gibson's obviously a great writer, but you see in it Like, I if you've not read it, I don't know if you guys are Alien fans. Don't mean to go off the tangent here, but I like Alien. I like Aliens. I actually enjoy Alien 3 for a lot of it. Alien Resurrection, I just recently rewatched. I don't find anything good in it, but I love Ripley, and Ripley's great. And it's so fascinating that even in this early screenplay treatment form, Ripley's pretty much written out of it. Spoiler alert. And she's not even in the book. Like it's fascinating, and I'm a big fan of what Dark Horse has done with this, with the Star Wars the Star Wars project that they did, where they took Lucas's first draft and they made it into a comic book. I hope Dark Horse does even more of this stuff, like find old versions of movies and stories that we know the finished version of, and if they're different enough, make them into comic books, because there's so much to glean from it. It's a cool story, but it's without Ripley being like, she's kind of sidelined the whole time. It's definitely that first draftness of just, you would get it and go, okay, well, we need more Ripley. Like, we need this, we need that, whatever. But it's a well done comic book, and it's well executed, and I love reading. I don't know if you guys, I love reading stuff like that. There's like the alt takes on that. So I recommend picking it up. There also, what they did, the other one I'm thinking of they did is the what was it? Was it the first? There was another Alien one they did that I read. I think it was the first Alien. It was like they did the first draft of it, and I'm here for that. I know they don't have the Alien license anymore, but whatever film properties they could get, I'm all for that. So if anyone in listening distance, I'm definitely going to vote for that. Yeah. What else we got this week? Oh, Nick Fury versus S.H.I.E.L.D. wraps up with number 4. As I've said before, it's a wonderful story. It's such a good story. It really cribbed, like every S.H.I.E.L.D. story since then, and most mainstream media has cribbed from this Nick Fury versus S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, they never let just S.H.I.E.L.D. be S.H.I.E.L.D. It's always S.H.I.E.L.D. has to be rotten. Even on the TV show, S.H.I.E.L.D. always has to be rotten from the inside. And they get it from this really, really, really wonderful miniseries. So yeah, so that's it. Yeah, so that's it for Marvel Comics that summer. That month, they were starting up their big bi-weekly pushes on a few of their biggest titles.
You were saying?
I was saying. Speaking of bi-weekly, we're talking Action Comics Weekly. We've got Wild Dog, Black Hawk, Nightwing, and Speedy, Deadman. Oh, and Superman. You see why Action Comics never really took off, guys? We're not exactly lighting the world on fire with marquee names here. Listen, I enjoy the adventures of everyone I just read, but I'm a rare bird. Todd McFarlane did the cover for Batman 423. That's an iconic cover. That's a comic book that shot up in value in the last few years, for real. You could have gotten this everywhere for $3, $4, $5 for years and years and years and years. But of late, it's such a great cover, and obviously McFarlane doing Batman, this issue has shot up in value. So if you get your hands on it, enjoy it while you have it, because then you're going to want to sell it and make money and buy more comics. Legion of Superheroes number 50, I think Ken Stacy did this cover. And it's the Time Trapper. The Legion was heading into a cool era. They were like maybe a year away from going on the whole 5-year gap thing, and Giffen was about to return, and they were doing some real experimental stuff with it. I liked it quite a bit. I just read the Legion, the Future State Legion, and while I like the concept a lot, the art was really off-putting to me. Just not because it was different. It was just actually hard to keep track. I feel like with a book like Legion, where your characters are so varied and so wild and so vast, they need to be grounded a little bit more for literal reader identification to kind of keep up with the action and what's going on. It's not a problem you have when you're talking about a book like Justice League, where everyone knows Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, etc. So with Legion, I think it always helps when, they're just a little more streamlined, a little more simplified character designs. But anyway, another tangent. Here we go. The Spectre 18 is doing its Pink Floyd The Wall homage cover. which is kind of neat. Superman number 21. This is the book I was talking about in the last 2 weeks. This is the introduction of Supergirl into this post-crisis John Byrne continuity. And she's the Supergirl of the alternate Earth, the Pocket Supergirl. And she turns out to be Matrix, which was, I think Matrix was a clone of Lana Lang. But then she could, like, you know, simulate the looks of whoever she wanted to be, etc. I think that there's something to do with Lana Lang was somehow involved with Matrix's origin. Memory serves. But this is also the story that a lot of people modern days point to Superman killing Zod in the first place. This was the first issue of that. When everyone was up in arms about Superman doing it in Man of Steel, people were like, well, one, Superman's killed before in regular, like, Silver Age stuff, but in the more modern continuity, in this specific issue, he really does kill Zod, because Zod's like, I'm going to kill everybody, and Superman's like, snap your neck. Or actually, he exposed him to gold kryptonite. Let's see here. Oh, V for Vendetta, number 1. If you've seen the movie and enjoyed it, you will love the book. And if you love the book, you'll probably like the movie, but I don't think you'll love it. I remember when I saw the movie, I was shocked that Warner Brothers would put out such a subversive movie. And there is, it's been a while since I watched it, but I feel like the message in the comic is that V is, at least the message that V is espousing is anarchy. And in the movie, it felt less anarchist and more like, I guess, communist. Like it definitely wasn't. There was a weird shift of political ethos between the comic and the movie. Both very good, both their own thing, and shocking that Warner Brothers made the movie they did make. It is more subversive, I think, than they realized they were making. But the book is amazing. I remember I bought all the issues off eBay probably 15 years ago, and then forgot that I think I didn't read them right away, but I knew I had them. Then I went to read them, and I couldn't find the book because I assumed I had the book. So I was very confused. It took me literally a month to figure out, oh wait, I actually have the actual issues, and then I read it, and it was amazing. It was wonderful. V and Watchmen are one of those books I never really read when they came out. I read them years later. Like I said, V years later. Watchmen, probably mid-90s. So probably about 10 years after it came out. And, yeah. I think that's it. I think that we're good for DC Comics.
You were saying?
And now, jumping over to the movies. So in September of '88, when these comics were being pulled off the shelves, we're talking about stuff like September 2nd, 8 Men Out. It's about the Chicago White Sox cheating scandal. That's right, White Sox. You cheated so much they made a movie out of you. It's a... Let's see, what else is here? September. A lot of movies that I don't know. Like Moon Over Parador, Running on Empty, War Party, Messenger of Death. Well, that's a canon movie. Oh, with Charles Bronson. It's got to be awesome. Come on. Miles from Home, Gary Sinise, or actually directed it. Tougher Than Leather. Oh, that's the Run DMC movie. Okay, I do remember that movie. Dead Ringers, David Cronenberg with Jeremy Irons. That movie's creepy. That movie's real creepy. Gorillas in the Mist, speaking of Alien, with Sigourney Weaver. That's on September 23rd. Daffy Duck's Quackbusters, which was a Ghostbusters ripoff, if I recall. That's on September 24th. Bird from Clint Eastwood. That's on September 30th. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. That's a classic. I recently saw that for the very first time. Loved it. Thought it's absolutely great. It's a shame that that's not a perennial classic everywhere. I don't know what the distribution rights were on that, but they dropped the ball. It should be everywhere. It's so charming. And wow, September of '88. There's a lot of, a couple good flicks, but really nothing to write home about. Nothing like, 8 Men Out was solid. And Gorillas in the Mist, I think that went on to win various Oscars, so that's obviously a big one. But not a massive month. So that's it for the movies.
You were saying?
And now let's get back to the Cobra Civil War.
Now.
Mass is ready.
Yes, and we left off with, where were we? So Destro was hitting the beach. Baroness had been captured by Serpentor, Baroness who was working with Cobra Commander, and the Cobra Commander had captured Hawk, Cobra Commander who was working with the Dreadnoks. They'd grabbed Hawk and were driving around with Hawk on the Thunder Machine. The Joes had taken partial control of the runway. Destro was on a part of the runway. Cobra was on one part of the runway. And then Cobra Commander, rather. And then Serpentor is on another part of the runway. So there's a lot of logistics, and that's actually going to play into a lot of what we talk about this week. But let's start with the cover, of course, by the great Ron Wagner and Bob McLeod. This is a great cover. This is a classic, absolute classic cover. Flames in the background. Serpentor in the roof of a Hiss, like in the gun turret of a Hiss tank, leering over the bound Baroness. She's tied to the top of the Hiss tank, she is throughout most of this issue. Manned by. It's funny. They're actually manned by Crimson Guardsmen, if you look closely. And bats. The Battlelander troopers are driving it, but it looks like Crimson Guardsmen are driving it. And oh no, wait, my brain's breaking. Yes, Crimson Guardsmen were allied with them because they were with Tomex Zema, and they were questioning why Mindbender was going off. So yeah, so this is actually great. So this absolutely follows the action in the story. So you got Crimson Guardsmen in the turrets of the Hiss with the bats in there. So what I just went through, that kind of who's with who, that is what happens throughout this entire issue.
Yo, Joe!
And I'm not here to say it's a problem. But I am here to say this is a great example of the lessons that I know Larry Hama has talked about very recently. He's talked about the lessons of writing, and I know, but in general, it's what a lot of comic book writers talk about, where it's really all about character, and it's really all about memorable character moments, not necessarily about plot stuff. So, and we're going to get to that, but first we're going to start with holding actions. It's Larry Hama script, Marshall Rogers pencils, Fred Fredericks on inks, Nell Yomtov color, Rick Parker lettering, Bobby Chase editor, Tom DeFalco editor-in-chief. Now, like we said, Marshall Rogers is doing the pencils, and Fred Fredericks on inks. Pencils and inks on this are wonderful, but reference points are off. General Hawk is not in the right costume throughout the entire thing. Nell Yomtov on colors, he wasn't doing colors last issue. All the colors for the Destro, those demons, the new Destro vehicles, all the colors are wrong throughout this entire issue. So as a like a middle chapter to the story, it's a little jarring in its difference. But you're talking about Marshall Rogers pencils, so you're talking about a difference of degrees of awesomeness. You're going from the amazing Ron Wagner to the legendary Marshall Rogers. So it's definitely, everything's really, really well done. It's just that the reference points were off. Now, what happened this month? They went bi-weekly. So you could only imagine that at some point the schedule got tight, and that's why they had to bring in, alternate pencils. That happens all the time. Alternate creative team, really, because it is really a whole different creative team outside of Larry. So that happens all the time. So you're forgiving of that. So no problem with that. But what I'm talking about is, it's actually evidence on this first page. There's a kind of out of place in the sense that we never really got these before. And it's an excerpt from a situation report, a sit rep, that Duke sends to General Hollingsworth. And it's summarizing for us, catching us up, what's happened so far. Having landed on Cobra Island as per orders in support of Serpentor against Cobra Commander, countered strong resistance in taking the airfield, blah, blah, blah. Hawk was captured. So it's all the stuff we talked about. We don't normally get these kind of like excerpts from sit reps, right? But it opens with the action is the Thunder Machine having run into Destro's Demon. And the Dreadnoks are fighting, and Destro's there fighting, and Hawk's fighting Buzzer, and so on and so forth. And this page really, really looks like toys come to life. I was talking about that with the other issues, where this whole fight really feels like the description of if you were to take all your toys at the time and have a big war, you could have used this Cobra Civil War as a blueprint to have that same fight in your bedroom floor.
Yo, Joe!
And I think that's a strength to it. And I think that this issue kind of succumbs to the plot machinations of it. There's a few nice moments of character stuff, but there's many, many, many pages in this issue of detailing who's where on the battlefield and how that's happening. And it's so rare that happens in the G.I. Joe books because they always go so fluidly. I think it stands out because it works well for this whole story arc, really. This whole, like, these are, more than any story I think we've read so far, these are your toys come to life, having this pitched battle on a very personal level, but also on a very tactical level because it's in a really enclosed space. So in order to free himself from the car accident that he found himself in, Thrasher is using the machine gun on the front of the Thunder Machine to, like, shoot its way off. And the bullets are just bouncing off the demon, the heavily armored demon. However, Destro is like, I'm not gonna, let's leave this to the ferret, the guy who drives the demon, which is an awkward name. And they have, now, it's funny, drawing wise, I'm assuming that the guy jumping off the ferret is supposed to be the Brigadier Commander, the Iron Grenadier Commander. Sorry, it's drawn to be it's colored to be rather, and you could say that because he's in the prior panel that it's Cobra Commander chasing Destro, but it's not. It's not, because Cobra Commander's supposed to still be on. I mean, he's not. He's just not. He's not chasing Destro. He doesn't chase him throughout this. But it looks like it's Cobra Commander jumping off Destro. So this is possibly one of the things that may have been lost in translation of bringing in the new creative team. It might be a coloring issue. The camera's so far, so it's hard to see details on the actual rendering itself. But the demon wins the day, blows up the Thunder Machine, and Destro, quote unquote, gets away. And Hawk is yelling at Buzzer to get Destro. He's getting away. So it's funny because the Joes were against the Dreadnoks, but everyone's against Destro. Everyone's against everyone, and that's what's happening this whole issue.
Yo, Joe!
So now we get a nice shot of Destro's army kind of storming the beach, but they're not really storming. They're sitting in wait, which is great because it's ominous. It's especially with that new design, the flight pod that they have. They're just hovering there. They're just waiting for the action to happen. And the Joes, we got this nice middle panel here. The Joes are just as confused as anything as to what he's doing, why he's there. All the individual Joes drawn really, really well. A lot of guys being called up by name. Duke is now in charge because Hawk's in the hands of the enemy, in this case, the Dreadnoks. And he orders Clutch to take Crankcase and Roadblock in the Awstriker and get Hawk away from those Dreadnoks before they get overrun by real soldiers, which is funny. And that's the kind of thing, that's the toyetic moment, right? So you're calling everyone out by name. Clutch, take Crankcase and Roadblock in the Awstriker and go get them, which, I'm here for.
Yo, Joe!
So Hawk and Buzzer are having a tete-a-tete on the beach. Hawk's holding his own. He's unarmed, but Buzzer's got his chainsaw machine gun thing. And we see that the middle panel is like these big action set pieces, and they're happening throughout the things. There's an aerial battle, there's a ground battle. Meanwhile, there are these personal battles happening, and then there's an inset of Serpentor. And this is where it gets into the tactical portion of this comic, which takes up a lot of it. Of Serpentor wanting a sit rep. He wants a situation update. And then we get, I think it's just a nameless CG, reporting that Destro controls the South Beach with 2 squadrons of armor. And then another CG is saying that Joes control the center of the airfield. And then as Zartan's approaching from the north, northwest rather, and so it's setting this up for us to kind of mentally. It's like role playing, really. That what's happening here is it's really describing a D&D adventure with G.I. Joe.
Yo, Joe!
And remember, technically, the Joes are on Serpentor's side. So wherever Serpentor's squad is based, and wherever the Joes are based, they're not going to be firing at each other. They're all going to be firing at Cobra Commander, but then they also don't trust that Destro is not going to shoot them in the back, so they got to watch out for that too. So there are a lot of moving parts here, and it's punctuated by these character moments like Roadblock and Clutch and Crankcase rescuing Hawk, which happens here. They pull up in the Ostriker, and now we get an inset of Zartan, and Zartan is going to get the lowdown of what's happening. So one of the worms is telling Zartan that's the current deployment of hostile troops at the airfield, and he's asking, who do we engage? And Zartan gives him we take and hold the west end of the airfield and wait and see what Destro's up to. So there's more putting chess pieces in place. We see that the Thunder Machine is still knocked over. They can't get it upright. Cobra Commander's still with the Thunder Machine. And Monkey Wrench blaming Thrasher, of course, for it. He grabs some grenades off of Monkey Wrench's bandolier.
Yo, Joe!
And uses those grenades to upright the Thunder Machine. That's what's great about something like the Thunder Machine is it's just the tank, it's a Road Warrior-esque tank. So using grenades to kind of flip it upright, he doesn't care what it looks like, as we say later. Maybe no harm done, except maybe a little scorched paint and a few shrapnel holes. That's fantastic. And we see Destro gets updated. He's updating his troops. He says, bring the engineers ashore. I want all vehicles entrenched behind earthworks. I want the flanks mined. No one will fire unless fired upon. Remember, Destro really isn't engaging right now. And this is a great line. We're going to conduct an orderly invasion here. So while Cobra Commander's getting away, Hawk is reminding Roadblock his priority is get the boys joined up with Serpentor's Hiss Column. So their job really is to unite with Serpentor, not to have 4 different factions.
Yo, Joe!
So the Thunder Machine is chugging along. It is a little worse for wear after being bombarded with grenades. Cobra Commander threatening to perform a lobotomy on Thrasher. Thrasher, by the way, still rocking the broken hand from their adventure in Sierra Gordo. And I think in the one panel they did draw him with the broken nose. I know he had the broken nose in the last issue, but he's definitely got the cast on, which is nice. And the Joes are really befuddled in this. So the Joes really are standing around and they don't exactly know who to attack or what to do here. They're entrenched though. They're surrounded by the Battle Force 2000 vehicles. And as Hawk pulls in, he basically tells them to get ready to move out because they're going to go meet up with Serpentor's crew.
Yo, Joe!
Now Serpentor, he realizes his airfield's wide open. So once the Joe team kind of gets to Serpentor, they're just going to absorb them into their ranks. And it's more. This page is more tactical, like it's playing. It's tactically saying, my guys are going to attack you from this way, and then your buddy's saying, okay, well, my guys are going to come from this way, and then you go pew pew pew. That's what this issue is, for better or worse. I like it. I think it works well. I think this is the kind of book. It's funny, I was not playing with my Joes. I just put them away at the time, but this is the kind of issue that you would absolutely use as a blueprint for your play. Zartan sees the Baroness is still strapped atop that hiss, and he realizes that Cobra Commander does not care that the Baroness is on top of the hiss at all.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Zartan's testing the waters by firing some shots at Serpentor's crew, and turns out the Joes at this point are stuck in the middle of that, so they really have got to make their way over to Serpentor. And the first guys to get there are Mutt and Junkyard, and it looks like Stalker and Cutter. And I absolutely love the way Cutter is dealing with Serpentor here. Serpentor's ordering the Joes around now. So he says, you there, tell your men to reinforce the right flank. And Cutter's like, with all due respect, Mr. Serpentor, it just doesn't work like that. We are here in a support and advisor capacity, and as such are subject to our own chain of command. And I am obligated to register an official complaint about your treatment of prisoners. Because while they're having this conversation, Baroness is strapped atop the hiss tank that Serpentor's in. Serpentor says, spare me. Will you do me a favor and have your captured asps open fire on Zartan's maggots? That I can arrange. It's great because it's like it's Cutter knowing the Geneva Convention. You know, he knows the rules of engagement and is like, we're here to help, but I kind of can't. You got to ask it a certain way so that I can comply. No one's happy about any of this. So, but let's still follow the rules, which I really dig.
Yo, Joe!
And the storytelling choices on this, the art in this is one, it's great. It's fabulous character work. Everybody feels like an action figure. They really do. They really feel like a toy. They feel, the proportions are very toyetic. Marshall Rogers is not, he's not playing around with exaggerated anatomies in any way, shape, or form. You know, he's staying to the nature of the toys, which is fabulous. Everyone's and really Duke's in costume too. It's just he's in the wrong costume. I'm sorry, Duke Hawk. He's just in the wrong costume. Hawk has now been in his bomber jacket look. He just has him in his old look, which is, just a mistake of communication. Everyone looks perfect. This picture of Breaker on the bottom of this page, fantastic. That looks straight out of like early G.I. Joe dossier pages. And the storytelling even is, it's very cinematic in the way of cutting from shot to shot to shot. It's not very comic book narrative telling, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't mean to get too artsy about it, but it's very much, we're picking a shot to show you. It's like Marshall Rogers had footage from a film, G.I. Joe issue 75, the movie, and he took all this footage and edited it in shots. There's, so far at least, as we go along, there's a few panels which we're going to get to, actually 2 more pages over, but most of it is shot to shot to shot, just showing you different action, because there's so much action going on. There's not a lot of room for the nuanced, kind of storytelling pacing that comics usually have, of like panel progression and things like that. It's really going from moment to moment to moment, because the script is dictating there's so many people we have to keep track of and where they're at. We don't have time to linger. Let's just go with panel to panel to panel to panel. That's a big takeaway from this issue.
Yo, Joe!
So now Wild Bill and Maverick, they're assaulting. Who are they going? They're assaulting Zartan, are they? Yeah, they had been harassing Destro apparently. Now they're going to pound Zartan. And now Cobra Commander finally makes his way back to Zartan, which those are technically Cobra Commander's troops, which Zartan, reminds him of. And Zartan's really running the show here. Let's be honest here. Zartan's kind of telling him what he needs to do next. Cobra Fred Mander, we should say, he's kind of enjoying this. He's kind of just like having a good time. Speaking of enjoying things, Destro in just the baller move of all time, Destro sets up a umbrella and a reclining chair on the beach to enjoy some lemonade or an iced tea rather, while his troops do the fighting. Like, that's just a baller Destro move for sure.
Yo, Joe!
And we see this view where his troops really haven't engaged. They're still sitting at the beach, kind of waiting. And they're in boxing parlance, they're doing that rope-a-dope. They're letting everybody tire themselves out, and they're going to make their move. Now, middle of this page, this is what I'm talking about comics progression wise. And even this feels like a scene from a animated version of this, where there's 3 panels, but it's all really one shot. But the fact that you break it up into 3 panels shows movement and progression. You easily could have just done this as one big wide panel, but when you break it up, you you build time into the reader's perception of what's happening, right? You build action into it. Were this one panel, which there's no reason it couldn't be. It might have possibly even been drawn as one panel and broken up. When you draw it as one panel, it looks like a slice of a moment. When you break it up into 3, it looks like a slice of action, in a series of moments. And so that's a little trick from the comic book perspective. But this is one of the few moments in this issue of doing things like that. There are a couple others, but we got Leatherneck. He's he's grousing. He and Beachhead, and then Duke in the middle. What are you griping about, Leatherneck? Do you really want some Pentagon desk driver getting underfoot and slowing you down? And then I think that's Airborne in the back. Talking about Leatherneck, it wouldn't slow him down at all. He'd just kick him along the ground as he runs and shoots. And while this is happening, Roadblock and Crankcase are heading by. We see Fast Ride. Like, you just see everyone in action. These are all the toys that you would have, and everyone's doing their toy thing. We've now hit a point in the Joe toy, the size of how many Joe toys there are, where you could do this kind of battle and literally not have a generic toy involved in the mix. Remember some of the early issues when they try to do this stuff, a lot of times they were just, random Cobra tanks that didn't look like a toy, or this or that, or, a lot of green shirt troops. There's no green shirts here. There's no green shirts. I don't see any green shirts in this. It's all Joes, Cobras, and there's a legion of Cobra troopers that all in the mix. That's the great place that G.I. Joe has gotten to at this point.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Roadblock, that All-Striker they were in, that's been blowed up real good. And Crankcase is hurt, so he's carrying him out, refusing help from Hawk, who is driving by on a, not sure what vehicle that is, but it's it's one of the Battle Force 2000 vehicles, and they're partnering up with. I like to think that Roadblock refuses his ride because he's driving with Dr. Mindbender, not necessarily because Roadblock can manage it, because he doesn't want to ride with Dr. Mindbender. So finally, the full force of the Joe team has finally caught up with Serpentor. And, of course, Serpentor is worried about the chain of command. Now, this whole time, while Baroness is trussed up, she's not saying anything. Her head is up, though, in this picture, as if she's paying attention. I would love to see Baroness in the mix here. I would have loved to have seen her have a few smart comments to say and kind of be an irritant in Serpentor's side. I think that would have been great, a great addition to this issue.
Yo, Joe!
Because otherwise, she's just... she's just a prop, and that's not coming from any, she needs more representation. That comes from representation. This 100% comes from, I love the Baroness, and she can get under people's skin, and she's right there. She should have something to say about all this stuff. So I'd love to see more. I would have loved to have seen more of that in this issue. So this is great. So we got Hawk and Serpentor kind of meeting face to face and having this tete-a-tete about who's in charge. Let's see here. There's nothing to discuss. Our orders are explicit. You have requested our aid and support. We are here to provide that, but at my discretion. And Serpentor says this is no way to run a campaign. There must be a central command. Well, I agree, but I'm still not going to turn over command of the G.I. Joe team to you. You play the game by my rules or not. Like, this is great. This is just, and here's what this is a nice, so this is good. It's great coloring decision by Nel Yomtov, but it's nice serendipity, because had they drawn Hawk in his what should have been his costume, which was the brown bomber jacket, Hawk would not have had the exact same color scheme as Serpentor. So let's look at this panel, guys. You got Serpentor in the green and yellow, Hawk in the green with the blonde hair. They're two dudes talking to this. They're having the same conversation. They're the same dude talking to each other. Theoretically, it really works out well. It doesn't work. He's changing costumes, doesn't really work, but this panel might have made the whole thing worth it. But as they're kind of going at it, there's a big explosion nearby, just a random shell, I guess. And most of Serpentor's battle android troopers get blowed up really good. So as it's raining bat parts, Serpentor realizes I have no choice but to accept your terms. Mindbender see to the deployment of the bats and call in for some air cover, etc. So that's a nice way to resolve things. But this is a really cool panel, because they're at a loggerhead, and it's the same color scheme.
Yo, Joe!
Now, over at the west end of the runway, and we get more like the whole issue is just peppered with logistical stuff. And I gotta say, it's done well. It absolutely is done well, but you see how it takes away some of those. You have to squeeze those personal moments in when you can. And that's what a lot of these insets are for. So, you get the Mamba pilots talking to each other, Maverick talking to Wild Bill, although Wild Bill takes a shot here at the bottom. His rear engine goes out. Now he's got to go down. There's a lot to juggle in this issue. It really is. And some of these small insert panels do a very nice job. You could see these. There's a lot of panels in this issue, specifically this one in the middle. There was a couple 4 or 5 pages earlier that could have been those puzzles. You guys remember those puzzles that came out around this time where there were 4 of them. There were multiple editions of them, but you would put them all, they were each independent, but then you put them all together and there was a big giant attack, on Cobra Island. Great puzzles. I had 2 of them, if I recall correctly. You can find them on eBay relatively cheap. And you can get them all in good condition, and they're neat. And that's what, there's a lot of panels on this that look like those puzzles, because one of them was like a battle on land. One of the puzzles was a battle on mostly on sea. One of them was mostly on air, those kind of things. And that's what you're getting in this issue.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, back at the flight control tower, we're catching up with our guys who took that tower. Cool coloring here. So the coloring choices here, storytelling wise, we see Wild Bill's damaged helicopter. We see the flight path that had previously got the rocket in the prior panel. We see it cutting across this top panel. Second panel, it's crashing. And then the camera shifts, but we get to see that Wild Bill did hit the dirt. So if you're paying attention to that, you get rewarded. But coloring wise, we're getting nice depth here. And it's usually a flip. Usually when you show, at least in the Joe books, when they were showing stuff closer to the camera, that's the stuff that would be in full color. And then as it would go out, it would get more bland, more flat colors until, eventually like deep in shadow. These guys, they've taken the tower and they've cut the lights. They don't want people to know they're in there. So how's the best way to show that is the guys nearest the camera are in full black silhouette. Then the guys near the window, they're in gray shadow. Then the world is in color. Because remember, they're doing all this fighting in the middle of the day. So this is a really nice comic book storytelling trick to show that, yeah, these guys are really hiding out. No one remembers that they're hiding in this thing. And they're providing air reconnaissance. They're providing reconnaissance to the Joe team of telling them, like recon, like who's where and who's what. But they're also feeling like they're left out of the fight. And they have to be reminded that, hey, they're doing their job up here. If they weren't up here, the guys on the ground would be in a whole lot of trouble.
Yo, Joe!
Now, these 2 panels, these are those panels that would absolutely be at place on those puzzles. It's a giant air fight. There's a ton of fangs and rattlers in the first picture. And then in the second picture, it's a huge dogfight between the Mambas and the fangs and the rattlers. The Mavericks in the mix. Who else? Is there anyone else? Yeah, I mean, it's great. And this is exactly the kind of image that would be on those puzzles. We do get to catch up with Wild Bill. He survived the crash. Doc and Lifeline are pulling him out of the wrecked Tomahawk. Yeah, and there's more logistics, at the east end of the runway. We get Hawk updating us. Cobra Commander's maggots have a greater firing range than the his tank, so they can stand off out of a range and pound us safely. So it's like telling us the status of the battle, which is how you would play, Yo,
Joe!
So Serpentor is going to take the bull by the horns here, and they're going to head up for a full frontal assault. He says, "You may join us if you wish, Hawk, or you can stay here and argue the ethical fine points of this tactical maneuver. And then every one of your action figures shows up for this charging. Duke, Lowlight, Stalker, Hawk, Cutter, Shipwreck, Beachhead, Roadblock, Rock and Roll, Leatherneck, Sci-Fi, Mutton Junkyard. I think that's Airborne. Yeah, like they're all there. They're not green shirts. They're the dudes you had. And then on the west side of the runway, it's Cobra Commander and his Vipers and his Maggots and some troopers. They're doing a counterattack. So it's the charge of the Light Brigade.
Yo, Joe!
And here's a nice aerial shot to kind of give you an idea of what's happening. And it's just a bunch of ants going at it, and it's like Braveheart, and they're going at it. So now we see up in the watchtower. This is a nice thing by Falcon. He says, or Tunnel Rat is saying, if we don't go down and pitch in, there might not be a G.I. Joe team left to recon 4. And Falcon says, and if the team has to disengage and withdraw, the enemy will control this field, and we'll be right here to report on them. If we don't follow our orders, we may as well be vigilantes like comic book superheroes. I love it. It's great. Then this bottom panel, this is another one of those singular panels that could be one shot, but by breaking it up, it gives breadth to it. It puts your imagination in the gutters between these shots of a lot of dudes fighting, and it's very Braveheart level. Leatherneck's firing his gun, but there's dudes going up the sides of each other's heads. I don't know who that is. I mean, that might be sci-fi, but somebody is butting the rifle of their gun into what I'm presuming the guy's laying on the ground, so right in their face. Like there's really nice detail and good action, and they're fighting in the trenches here.
Yo, Joe!
And finally, Destro is starting to get engaged. Destro was just waiting for Serpentor's air cover and Cobra Commander's air cover to decimate each other. So now Destro is starting to roll in his infantry off the beach. All of them rested up and freshly supplied. So Serpentor and Hawk realize that discretion is the better part of valor. So they decide to withdraw. Cobra Commander also realizes it's time to... Shocking. Cobra Commander's retreating. Shocking.
Yo, Joe!
So now it's a brief respite in the battle, and it's another resetting of the chessboard, so to speak, for the action, where we get described that puts the volcano between us and Serpentor's army, us being Zartan and Cobra Commander, and then over on Serpentor's army being, I want to flank security out 100 meters on both sides. But there's a volcano between us and Cobra Commander. Never assume that the enemy can be deterred by a geographic obstacle. And then Destro now has taken the airfield. The airfield, remember, is the place everyone wanted to be. Destro's taken the entire airfield. But it's not secure until they really set up a perimeter. And Destro is going to take the air tower as his command center. So it's starting to rain. The sun's now gone. And it makes sense that it's raining. Destro is from the Scottish Highlands.
Yo, Joe!
And the Joes, rightfully, are now escaping through the access tunnel that they first came in with. And Destro, because he's really bright, he says someone to seal off the access to this drainage system, get a complete security sweep over, under, and around, not just electronics, I want humans going over every square inch, because Destro is a tactical genius. He's not going to get caught unawares like Cobra Commander or Serpentor may. So our tower team, they're now back in the spotlight, the narrative spotlight, and they're kind of between a rock and a hard place, because the way that they're in the sewers again, but the way that they came in is blocked because Destro's troops are starting to enter that. That's what Tunnel Rat comes back to tell us. So Gung Ho says we're trapped unless Captain Min, thanks Shirley, knows any other way out of here. And my dog Shirley Fiend's a big fan of Captain Man. He says, I know a way out, but you're not going to like it. I don't remember what it is, but I have a feeling it's got something to do with sewage. That's the only thing I can think of. Something to do with sewage. So then the next issue, it's the amazing conclusion of the Cobra War, and all's fair. Guys, I enjoyed this issue. I don't know if you could, I hope it came through, because I enjoyed it, but not in that normal way that you kind of bask in the meat of the pathos and of the drama of the characters kind of, being, jerks to each other, or being, whatever to each other. It's in that toy way. I really enjoyed it in that felt like I was peering over the shoulder of would have been 13-year-old Joe, G.I. Joe, but Joe, me, of a 13-year-old me, and watching me play. And why that's what this issue felt like. I feel like all of us can identify with this specific issue, the way this issue is told, the techniques that Larry and Marshall Rogers used to tell this issue, in that this is us playing. This is us setting up in a room and saying, okay, because I did that all the time. One corner of my room was where I kept the Terrordrome. You know, that thing was so big, but I would never store it next to, you wouldn't store it next to the Joe headquarters. Because one, when you want to play, they would never be next to each other. So why not keep it where you're going to play? So the Terrordrome would be in one side of the room. Then there was another side of my room where, like my tile, the floor tile was mostly blue, right? So that was the ocean. So that's where the tactical land, sea, air battle platform was. I never had the flag, so shut up. But that's where my battle platform lived, right? So if I ever wanted, and all my boats stayed there, and the whale and stuff like that. So that was, I don't know, that's how I played. And everything was always set up, but everything was always territorial and different. And that's what I got from this issue. Everything's territorial in this issue. And you're here on the west side of the airport, you're on the north side, and you got to fight here. And you're moving these chess pieces, but you're doing it in a comic book. And it felt like a role-playing adventure of G.I. Joe having like the battle portion of an RPG. I dug it. I dug it for those reasons, man. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And I enjoy you. And we'll see you next week, because now you, Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.